It's really about my players and coaches, and every day doing everything I can not to let them down. And at the end of the day, that's all we got, because all this other stuff like the crowds, the rankings, the stuff on Twitter, that ain't real. What's real is the relationships we have, the interactions we have, helping them become the best version of themselves.
Great leaders know how to motivate their teams, and if you want to see how it's done, keep listening. Welcome to How Leaders Lead. I'm David Novak, and every week I have conversation with the best leaders in the world to help you become the best leader that you can be. My guest today is Eliah Drinkwitz. He's the head coach of the University of Missouri football team. And let me brag on my alma mater for a minute, because last year was a breakout season for this Mizzou team. They went 11-2 and earned a spot in the Cotton Bowl, where they beat this little team called Ohio State. And Eliah was named SEC Coach of the Year. Now, Eliah and I recorded this episode before the season started, but let me tell you, I just got back from watching Mizzou beat Vanderbilt, and let me tell you, they are now 4-0 as they get ready for Texas A&M. And I was the honorary captain and had the time of my life. It was so much fun to be there on Friday, give them a motivational speech, go to all the team meetings, go to the team dinner, be on the sidelines, be in the locker room after that double overtime victory. It was amazing. And one thing for sure, something special is happening at Mizzou. And after this conversation, you're going to see why Eliah knows how to motivate his players by balancing connection, encouragement, and challenge. It's a formula we all can follow, and you can follow it too if we want to get the most out of our teams. And let me tell you something, Coach Drinkwitz knows how to do just that. So here's my conversation with my good friend and soon to be yours, Eliah Drinkwitz. Mizzou. It's great to have you on the show.
Man, I appreciate the opportunity. This is like one of those highlights in life. Like you know, SEC Coach of the Year, yeah, that's pretty cool. But to be on this podcast, I mean, that's a whole nother level. So I just appreciate the opportunity, man.
You're great. You know, I met you for the first time at the opening of Chiefs, which is Eric Church's new bar and music venue in Nashville, Tennessee. And I got to ask you, how'd you get to know Eric to begin with?
So, you know, I was a head coach at Appalachian State. And, you know, fortunately for us, Eric Church is an alumni for there. And his dad, Ken, is a huge supporter. And so Ken kind of, you know, made an introduction and you know, Eric was a big supporter, would always provide us with things that we could use for auctions and raise money. And so just started developing a relationship there. You know, never had an opportunity to really interact with him. But, man, I love his music. He's my favorite artist. And so it's a crazy story. I'm actually on vacation. I get this text message, and I don't really look at it. I look at it a little bit, and it's like, you're invited to the Chiefs grand opening. I'm like, what the crap is this? So I just quickly respond, and I'm like, yeah, I'll check my calendar because I get some of that stuff all the time. Then I reread it, and at the end it said EC. And so then I respond back, I go, is this Eric Church? And he goes, it's me, amigo. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, this is as big as it gets. And so got the opportunity to go, and man, it was an awesome night. You know, it's funny when you win and you get, you know, you get to go to places, people send you stuff. Like, I think here I've got like I got a book that was sent to me, you know, from you, from the David Novak Taking People With You, but I hadn't had a chance to meet you yet. And so when I got a chance to go to Chiefs, man, it was funny how the Lord worked, you know?
Yeah, that was really a unique experience. And you were standing right behind me, and we quickly became fast friends and had a great conversation. And
so here's a quick story for you, David. I don't know if you remember there was a cartoon back in the day called Pro Stars, okay? And it was Michael Jordan, Bo Jackson and Wayne Gretzky, and they were like saving the world Saturday mornings. It was a hit cartoon. Well, that night, Bo Jackson and Michael Jordan were at that grand opening. Unbelievable. A week later, I go to the Masters, and Wayne Gretzky is at the Mercedes deal. And so within the span of a week, I had met all the pro stars. I mean, it was an incredible week of my life to be able to be around that much greatness. And then obviously I got to see the Manning brothers and you and Eric. And so I'm living my best life. Let's not lie about it, okay?
You know, I happened to do a podcast with Eric Church, and it was a great one. And he talked about the importance of vision.
Yeah.
Now, you won the Cotton Bowl last year at Mizzou. And so what's your vision now when you think about the Missouri football program?
Yeah. I think when we first got here, I had this vision. And for me, vision is you got to see it happen before it happens. Like, that's what vision is. In your mind's eye, in your belief system, you got to see it happen before you actually get the tangible results. So in my mind, man, I thought the University of Missouri, all right, it's in the SEC. It's a little bit further north than all the other schools. It's the only Division I playing school in the state of Missouri. It's got these two great metropolitan recruiting areas in St. Louis and Kansas City. And man, I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, like, this could be an elite place. It's a place that could be one of the best in college football. But when I got here, man, we were not that. We were mediocre in a lot of areas. And so for me, it was like, okay, how do we take steps to get to where we want to be? And, last year was kind of that culmination of, man, this is kind of where I believed it could be. And so for me, this offseason was about challenging myself to do a new thing. How do we do a new thing at the University of Missouri? How do we not just be satisfied with where we're at? How do we keep pushing? And what's that new thing that we want to accomplish? And fortunately for us, we're surrounded with a great board of curators, a president who's got that kind of vision. And we just launched a $250 million North End Zone idea, and we're going to build it. And in 2 years, we're going to have a premium stadium in this conference. And so for me, it's always like, what's the next thing that we can accomplish? And for us, it's about building a premier, world-class, tell the rest of the country that, hey, we're here. We're here to mean business.
I saw something recently where if you look at the past 20 years in college football, nothing's really changed in the hierarchy of football. It's, the same 4 or 5 teams are always ranked 1 through 5 or pretty close to that. Do you ever see Mizzou being able to break into that level on a sustainable basis?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's exactly why I'm here. And because here's what I see. In the last 5 years in college athletics, it's been a total disruption. You've had transfer portal, you've had NIL, now you got this NCAA settlement. And so the things that built these blue buds in the past have now kind of been equalized. And so for us, it was an opportunity. I've had this saying to our administration is, we need to be stable in the midst of instability, and we need to be adaptable in the midst of a lot of uncertainty. And I think if we can have stability within the coaching staff, within the systems that we run offense and defensively, we can be an attractive place for great talent out of the transfer portal. We've been really efficient and effective with utilizing our NIL, and I think it's balanced the playing field. Now, I think the other thing that's key is, in the past, you really had to be one of the best 4 teams in order to have a shot at it. But what we know now is you just got to be in the top 12. And if you can get in the top 12 with an experienced quarterback, no different than in the past in the NFL, a team gets hot like Eli Manning and the New York Giants. They're playing their best football at the end. A team gets hot like Peyton Manning playing their best football at the end, or Tom Brady, or Patrick Mahomes. You got a chance to win. And currently right now, we got a pretty good quarterback who's got a lot of experience. So, we got a long way to go, but there's a formula to do that. And I believe if you can consistently recruit the talent, you can consistently have a stable foundation for what you're trying to do within your coaching staff. I've said, if you build it, they will come. And, our university's built the brand new indoor facility. They built this north end, or they're building this north end zone. We've recruited the talent. Now it's time to continue to put it all together.
And you talk about stability being something that's really important if you want to really get to greatness. Yet with this, transfer portal, you can put your heart and soul into a player. And I don't know you real well, but I know you enough that that's exactly what you do. And then they can just leave you on a dime.
Yeah.
How have you sort of reoriented your own mentality towards that as a leader?
So now this is deep now. Okay. So one of my best friends in the world is Blake Baker, my defensive coordinator from last year. And we have all this success, and I'm all banking on all this stuff moving forward. And he feels like his journey's called him to another SEC school. And man, I disagreed with him, but it's his life. It's his journey. It's his opportunity. And I wished him well. And now you got to rebuild. And in my heart, like, man, it's just, it's raw. And that's the same thing. I've had several players do that. But I was watching Yellowstone. This is last year. I was watching Yellowstone, and there's this 2-minute clip where Jimmy is riding down to the 4-6's ranch, okay? And he asks him, he goes, why do you want to be a cowboy? And he goes, I like the rodeo. I like the lights. And the guy asks him, what about the horse? Do you like the horse? And Jimmy's like, well, I never really thought about it. And he says to him, look, if you want to be a cowboy, it's about you and your horse. Trying like hell not to let each other down. And so for me, it really just redefined what my entire existence in coaching is. It's really about my players and coaches, and every day doing everything I can not to let them down. And at the end of the day, that's all we got, because all this other stuff like the crowds, the rankings, the stuff on Twitter, that ain't real. What's real is the relationships we have, the interactions we have, helping them become the best version of themselves, letting them achieve something that a lot of these guys never dreamed of. Man, you know how many guys in my room are going to be first-generation college graduates? We talk about in our program all the time, chase two dreams, a life with football and a life outside the game. Because the reality of it is football can change their life for the positive if they go to the NFL with NIL. But, man, what can really change their life forever in the trajectory of their family's lineage is getting that degree. And so for me, it just reframed everything about it. And so, yeah, man, I get my heart broke a lot. I mean, guys come in that we've invested in, they're like, hey, I got to transfer out. I need to go somewhere else. You know what I do? I get back on that saddle. I ride that horse again because I know, hey, that's their journey. My journey's right here at the University of Missouri, and there's going to be somebody else come in, and they deserve to get the very best out of me. There's another thing they say in Yellowstone. They say cowboying's like art without an audience. And for me, that's really what coaching is too, man. Because the best coaching that I do, there's no crowds around. It's not on social media. It's in one-on-one meetings. It's at a practice field. And so for me, that's kind of how I reframe, the disappointment when people leave.
You talk about the college football business basically being disrupted with NIL and the transfer portal, and it's leveled the playing field. So you're looking at that as a very positive fashion. So you've got this vision that you want to get Mizzou, on a consistent basis up there at the top.
Yeah.
And you got the different playoffs system, which is great. So those are really good things. When you think about your staff,
mm-hmm.
have you restructured or hired different kinds of people, given the fact you got NIL and the transfer portal? I mean, how do you navigate just the finance and the statistics of it all?
Yeah, I think that's actually, yes. So when you said, how did I restructure the staff? So, when I first started, my ego was tied to me being a play caller. And I felt like, man, as long as I'm a good play caller, I can always justify, if the offense is doing good, blah, blah, blah. And what was going on was I wasn't doing the best job I could for my football team. I wasn't being the head football coach. And so it really came down to, if we really wanted to, if as the leader, I really wanted to take this thing to a different level, I had to do what I asked my team to do all the time, which is embrace your role, put the team first. Not embrace your role, put your ego first. And so for me, it was, hey, I need to go be a head coach. I need to go make sure I understand the contracts, the financials, the investment. I need to go be raising money. I need to make sure that the culture's right, that our guys understand that comparison's the thief of joy. It doesn't matter what you make compared to somebody else. It's what you have, and be grateful for what your opportunity is. And so I went out and hired an offensive coordinator, and Kirby Moore has done an outstanding job. He's one of the brightest offensive minds in college football. And And that's allowed me to really do a lot of the things that I need to do in order to get the team to run. It's natural when somebody gets a promotion to really lean on their strengths as what they do. But really, I think you get promoted because most of the time you have a figure it out factor. You've been successful at your previous jobs because you just figured out what that was, and you grew in those things. And so that's really what I did. And I'm still doing it today. You talk about in your book, chapter 3, fill in your gaps. I realize I've got some issues that I got to keep getting better. So today I was working on my schedule and I had a question come up in my mind, picked up the phone and I called Coach Saban and asked him, hey, how did you handle this? What were some ideas that you had? And he was gracious enough to give me about 15 minutes of wisdom there on, hey, this is how I did it when I was running the program. And so it's allowed me to have a lot more flexibility to do that. And I think it's allowed our team to see me as the leader embrace the things that I talk about in our culture, which is embrace your role, put the team first.
We'll be back with the rest of my conversation with Eliah Drinkwitz in just a moment. As you've heard us talk about, Eliah and I are both big fans of country music star Eric Church. And in Eric's episode of How Leaders Lead, he shares how every leader needs conviction around their vision if they want to lead people through the tough times.
Number one thing is vision. And your conviction to that vision is going to define whether or not you're a good leader or you're not a good leader. Because there's going to be times that people challenge that. There's going to be times that you don't have success. And if you don't continue to have that conviction to the vision, then you're not going to be able to lead them through the rough times or the times when it's very challenging.
Go back and listen to my entire conversation with Eric Church, episode 192, here on How Leaders Lead. I want to get more into how you're taking Mizzou to new heights. But first, I want to take you back. What's a story from your childhood that shaped the kind of leader you are today?
Growing up, I lived in a trailer. My dad was a teacher. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. I had 3 sisters, 2 brothers. We lived in a trailer, 3 brothers in one room, 3 sisters in the other. My dad but he had to go back to school to get his teaching license in the state of Arkansas. So there was a year there where he was on unemployment, temporary work. He'd get up in the middle of the night and go, shovel spinach at the local Allen Cannon Company. He'd umpire baseball. He just did whatever it took to keep our family afloat. And I remember my mom talking about, hey, as a team, we got to stay together. We all got to pull our own weight. We all got to sacrifice. We all got to do whatever it takes for us to be successful. So my oldest sister went and got a job. My older brother went and got a job. Me and my other brother mowed yards to do whatever we could just to keep our family going. And so I think for me, that was really when I first really embraced this team philosophy where you're more powerful together than you were by yourself. And I never once was the star. I was a decent high school football player, but man, I understood team and I understood keeping people together. And I think really that when I look back at it now, I think that was really something that influenced me, whether I ended up becoming the student body president at my high school or becoming the student government president at Arkansas Tech University. I think it was because I was always gathering people and making people feel a part of the team. And I think that was a foundational trait for becoming a coach.
It's interesting that you say you grew up in a trailer.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. My dad was a government surveyor. And so I got to ask you this one. When my family gets together at Christmas time or the holidays, it doesn't matter how big the house is. We all just sit on top of each other. We clubbed it.
Yeah.
Is that the case for you?
Yeah. And you know what's crazy, brother, is now God has blessed me. I live in this dumb, stupid mansion. But every time I go home, we're all 6 in one room. We're all in the living room together. Well, y'all spread out. What are we doing here? But no,
I know once it's in the wood, it's hard to get out.
It's hard. It's hard. But just to keep my daughters humble, we drive by. There's a trailer that we drive by on the way to church, and I always look over and say, "Hey, I used to live in one of those," and they don't believe me.
That's great. And when did you have this light bulb moment, or did you have one that said, I want to be a coach?
Yeah, you know what? I was in my mind, my senior year, I was going to school. I was wanting to go be a lawyer. I have no idea. I mean, I like to argue and be rational about my thought process. So I wanted to be a lawyer. And my high school football coach pulled me aside and said, have you ever thought about coaching? I think you'd be really good at it. And I really had never thought about it. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. Well, he was smarter than I was. So I went to school and I had put that totally out of my mind. And they had a coach leave. And so on Friday nights, they needed somebody to be up in the box talking to their defensive coordinator about what was going on. And so they called me and said, hey, will you drive to the games on Friday nights and be our spotter up in the box? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. And they had me hooked. And so from that point on, I knew I wanted to coach. And so from then, it was about mapping out how to become the best coach possible. I knew that there was an elite coach in the state of Arkansas named Gus Malzahn. And so I worked really hard to get my student teaching assignment in Springdale, Arkansas with him, was able to do that. And then from that point on, man, it says in the Bible, the minds of men plan the ways the Lord directs their steps. And that's kind of how it worked out for me.
Fantastic. And, you talked a little bit earlier about what you think coaching is, really bringing the best out of people and lifting each other up. Can you give me an example of a player or a team where that really came to life for you?
Yeah. I mean, I really think last year's team, when we were going into fall camp, okay, I felt like we were a really talented team, but we were a little bit selfish. Like we knew we were talented, but it was really more about, Coach, I want to be all SEC and I want to be this and I want to be, recognized for my talent. And so for me, it was really about challenging this football team to let's prove that together we're collectively talented, because if the team will achieve something, all the rest of us will achieve it. But if it's about us individually, I don't care how good we are individually. If our team doesn't have success, nobody's going to recognize how talented you are. You're not going to receive the accolades that you want to receive. And so you have to buy into this team mentality. I was reading the other day, they say this generation is the most under-encouraged and under-challenged generation. And I thought about that. That is so true. Like, sometimes this generation, if you challenge them, they think it's personal. But if you don't challenge them, then they just waddle in and being average. But you also got to encourage them too. And so it's that magic touch of figuring out how to challenge them, how to encourage them, how to connect with them in order to get the most out of them. And, right now there's that big deal going on with Tua Tagovailoa talking about, a previous coach and Mike McDaniel. And then you have Tom Brady come back and talk about how, it was really him utilizing both the challenging of Coach Belichick and the encouragement of Josh McDaniels that really allowed him to grow and be the best. And so for me, it's about utilizing that. I think Brady Cook's a really good example. Brady Cook last year was in a huge battle for the job. And we were challenging him to play better and be more accurate, be a leader. And he goes out there and he plays really good against the team. And before the game, they were booing him. I come in the post-game press conference and I just rip our fans to shreds and say, you can't boo the starting quarterback. You can boo me all you want, but you can't boo the starting quarterback at the University of Missouri as long as I'm the head coach here. And, man, it was something that galvanized our team because they knew that the head coach at the University of Missouri, he's got our backs. And I think it was that fine line of I was challenging him in private, but in public, I was cheering him, and everybody knew I had his back.
And now you got a great quarterback going into this season, which is fantastic. How do you get into the psyche of these 18 to 22-year-olds, these athletic superstars? Everybody that makes a team was at least very good in high school.
I think the biggest way for me is you got to connect with them, and you got to figure out what makes them tick. And everybody's a little bit different. Like I had a young man come in here the other day, and he's got an opportunity, I think, to be a first-round draft pick, but he hasn't matured quite the way we want him to. And so I just brought him in, and I thought maybe it was arrogance. I thought maybe he was way too focused on the NFL and way too, like, I think I'm really good. It wasn't that at all. What he needs to hear from me and from our quarterback is that we need you. I'm counting on you. Because he told me, he said, Coach, when I don't block, I can't hardly look at Brady in the face. I can't look at him because I know that I let him down. And when he told me that, I knew we had him. Because then it was about me and the offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator and Brady making sure he knew, hey, man, we're counting on you today. We're counting on you to be a more mature player. We're counting on you to practice harder. We're counting on you to be a leader in that offensive line and not being out front and gung-ho because he's not quite there yet. But he knows we're counting on him. Man, he's gone to a different level because he understands that there's a connection piece. And I think it's just different for everybody. Luther Burden is motivated to leave a legacy here. He wants to be the best player to ever play at the University of Missouri. And so he's got this goal he wants to achieve. And so, last year he returned punts. He wasn't very good at it. He didn't catch them in the air very much, but he didn't practice very good. So before we started fall camp, I called him in and said, hey, everybody that has won this award that's not a quarterback or a defensive end has this in common. They've scored a special teams touchdown by returning punts. And I would Peter Warwick, Reggie Bush, Desmond Howard, Charles Woodson, Barry Sanders. And I have all these clips, and I watch them with him. And, man, every day he spends 5 extra minutes before practice, 5 extra minutes after practice catching punts. Because I tied his personal vision with what motivates him. But I need it for our team. He thinks he's doing it for him. I tricked him. I need it for Mizzou Tigers. But when you can connect those two, and I think this day and age with our players, in the past when you and I were growing up playing, if you said the team needed it, that's what I was about. But now you just got to make sure that their personal goals and the team goals match.
That makes so much sense. And like we talked about earlier, your players can transfer on a dime now.
Mm-hmm.
How has that affected your ability to instill discipline and be a truth teller, especially with this person that say it's going to be a first-round draft choice? I mean, you don't want to lose this guy. How do you balance that? Does it affect you?
David, I think honestly, it's given me the freedom to be even more of a truth teller because I tell them all the time, like, this is how we do it here. You don't have to, but everybody that's going to stay here is going to do it just like this because this is our brotherhood. This is our culture. And I've got to fight and protect our brotherhood and our culture. And so when somebody's not doing or upholding the standard that we have, it's up to us as coaches, whether it's Coach Russell, who I think is the best strength coach in the business, or myself or our coaches, to tell them the truth. Because if they leave based off hearing the truth, I can live with myself. But if they leave and I haven't told them the truth, well, then shame on me because I didn't give us a fair chance to really connect and keep the young man.
As a coach, every year is a new year, and you always have new players, and you got to build a new team. Take us through your process that you use to really build a great team.
Yeah, now more than ever, right? We had 46 new players from last year's team, and you have 120 on your roster, so you're talking roughly 40% of your team is brand new. And so for us, it really starts with laying the foundation of who we are, and that starts from the very beginning. And so we have the very first team meeting, I tell them what the goal for our program is. Chase 2 dreams, develop an elite edge, play for championships. You come to school here, you ask any one of my players, they can tell you, what's the goal for me here? Chase 2 dreams, develop an elite edge, play for championships.
Say more about Chase 2 dreams.
Yeah, so for me, Chase 2 dreams is, God has given these guys a unique ability to play the game. I mean, they're the elite 1% of 1%, but we all know that of the 120 kids I have on my football team, we set the Mizzou record last year for draft picks, and it was 7. Okay, so the rest of these guys have got to have a dream, and even those 7 players that go play in the NFL, I mean, we saw Eli and Peyton and Bo Jackson at Chiefs opening. They're in their second phase of life. So you got to identify outside of the game of football, who am I and what kind of person and what kind of purpose do I want to have so that when the game's over, I can be a positive contributor to society. We got an AAU institution, one of 65 in the entire United States. I mean, it's an unbelievable academic institution. Shame on them if they let this university just use them for their talents on Faroe Field on Saturday. They got to maximize, they got to use the university. They got to get to know the business school, the engineering school, the David Novak School of Leadership. I mean, they got to maximize those connections that they have. And so that's what I talk about when chasing 2 dreams. And then, we talk to them about, okay, this is the goal. These are our 4 core values. We spend a week in the off season teaching what each one of those core values are. Then we spend a week teaching what an elite edge is and exactly what we mean by that. And then we get into fall camp and we do it again. And then, we also do personal training, which helps them do Chase 2 Dreams. We also bring in guest speakers. But man, we are just continually emphasizing the messages of who we are and what we live by. And I think that's been really good. And, look, we have some new guys. So the very first week here in fall camp, we stay in the dorm. Well, I had 2 transfers. I guess they thought I was kidding. So they snuck out of the dorms and they didn't stay with the team. And so I caught them. And it was a moment right there where I knew, depending on how I handled it, it was really either going to galvanize our team or it was going to fraction the brotherhood. And so for me, it was a pivotal moment, and I figured out exactly how we were going to handle it. We handled it, and it was a great thing for our team to come together and realize, okay, we're all in this together, and we either have to be all in together or we're all going to be out. And so it was really good.
Say more about how you handled it.
Okay, so, at first I was really ticked off, okay? And I was just going to blow it up, and I was going to make a huge scene about it. And I really challenged myself to how do I take a negative and turn it into a positive? Because the most important thing we do is practice. The only way you get better at the game of football is to practice. So I called them up, and their number one core value is always compete. So we're getting ready for practice, and at the end of the practice, we have this thing called red zone lockout. Okay, and red zone lockout is offense versus defense, and they're going to go back and forth until they score enough points to be the winner. And I said, here's what we're going to do. We always compete, all right? So the winner of red zone lockout, you get to leave the dorms early, okay? The losers got to stay in the dorms an extra night. And defense, you had 2 players, and nobody knew it. I said, defense, you had 2 players who chose themselves over the team. So they're suspended for red zone lockout. They were starters. They're going to go be punished while we're doing red zone lockout. And now you got to compete versus the offense down 2 people. And that's real life, because that's what happens. If people make decisions outside of the framework of the team, they don't put the team first in their decisions, which is rule number 3, then everybody pays the price. So the offense, they went out there. Defense went out there. They competed. The offense won. It proved my point for me. The offense ends up winning. They competed and won. And really, the 2 guys that missed ended up being the reason that the offense won. So the defense had to pay the price. They had to spend 2 extra nights in the residence halls, and it made everybody realize, like, shoot, we're all dependent on each other. It rewarded the offense. We had a really spirited practice, and there was some accountability for the guys who were involved.
That's a great story. Say more about what you mean by elite edge.
Yeah, so for us, elite edge is everybody's always looking for an edge over the competition, right? But we define it. Edge for us is energy, details, grit, emotional consistency. We believe that positive, contagious energy, it's contagious, and we work on it every single day. At practice, we have this thing called DAPS, which is the transfer of positive energy. Dapping your teammate up, running on and off the field, dapping, in a drill, dapping a coach, because we want our guys to be excited to be at practice. We want our guys to be excited about what they're doing. And, man, there's no energy vampires allowed. You got bad attitude, bad energy, don't come in here. Go change your mindset or don't come, but it's only positive energy here. We believe details drive excellence. We believe the separation is in the details. Like, how do we get an edge over our competition? Man, we practice with great energy and great attention to detail. We all know that grit, that stubborn refusal to quit, that's how we define grit, is just showing up every day. If you can just show up every day with positive, contagious energy, and you can find details in your work, and, man, you're just there every single day, you're going to gain an edge over the competition. But then the last one, it's consistency. It's emotional consistency, right? Consistency, I believe, is the highest paid trait in the world. People pay you to be consistent every single day, a known quantity. And so we believe those 4 characteristics apply to whether you're talking about football, whether you're talking about being a CEO, whether you're talking about being in the classroom. If you have those 4 characteristics in your daily operational procedure, we believe you'll have an edge over the competition.
I was thinking as you were talking that you were sounding like a CEO right there. And you are the CEO of the Missouri football program.
Yep.
But, how much time have you put into thinking about these concepts? Because you've got real clarity around what you stand for, what do you want to have happen, what your culture is.
At first I didn't. I tell you what, when I first got to App State, I kind of had this loose idea. I knew what my core values were, but I didn't have a holistic program. And to be honest, we had a lot of really talented players, and we really overachieved that year, but it was really more of them than me. I think I added some good scheme stuff, but really it was more them than me. And when I first got here, I relied on my personality, and I relied on trying to bring people together, but I hadn't learned accountability, enforcing the accountability of what you really want to be. And I hadn't learned all the details yet. And I really was spending so much time trying to be the offensive coordinator and trying to raise money and trying to recruit that I really wasn't developing myself enough. And so whenever I took a step back and said, you know what, I'm not doing a very good job as a head coach. I better start studying. I better dive into books. I better figure out how to apply myself. That's really when it became clear to me, like, you better have a clear, consistent message of who you want to be, and you better be willing to hold people accountable. And the only way you'll hold people accountable is if you believe enough in it that if you don't, you're going to lose. And so that's really what it came down to me. Like, man, the hardest thing for me as a people pleaser is to hold people accountable. Like today we go out to practice, and my star football player doesn't have his thigh pads in. And I had a choice to make. I can either say, hey, man, he's a star. Let's not rock the boat today. Let's just have a positive. Let's just be positive. No. Well, that's a lack of detail. And if I don't attack it, then that's a lack of emotional consistency. And I'm violating rule number 3, which is put the team first. So I get on him. I get on his position coach, and I set the tone for the rest of the practice. Like, we ain't bull crapping. We're out here to get better. And the only way we can get better is we apply the standards to every single person. Because I know if we don't, we're going to lose, which is what happened my second year here.
Hey everyone, it's Kula. We'll get back to the interview in just a second. Before we do though, I have a question for you. Have you downloaded the How Leaders Lead app on your iPhone? If you haven't, take 20 seconds right now, go to the App Store, search for How Leaders Lead, and download the How Leaders Lead app. In the app, every day, you'll get a 2-minute video that'll give you a leadership insight from one of our amazing guests from our podcast to inspire you and to really get your mind in the right place before you start your workday. So go to the App Store, search How Leaders Lead, download the How Leaders Lead app, and start your day every day with 2 minutes of leadership wisdom. It'll take 20 seconds. Go to the App Store, download the app, and you'll be able to watch every day, just like me, the leadership insight from How Leaders Lead.
So you have very high self-awareness. How do you go about getting better and better as a coach and as a leader every year? I mean, how do you think about that?
I think about, okay, what are the areas in my life that I'm struggling with, and how do I get better at them? And really the messages I preach to our guys are things that I'm going through myself. Like, okay, like today we talked about, are we as good as we're ever going to be? No. Well, then we got to keep getting better. We got to go to practice today to get better. And so that's kind of my mindset is like, what are the things that I'm learning and growing in, and just take those to those guys. Because at the end of the day, I'm just an 18-year-old, 22-year-old immature person too that's really just trying to be, live out his dream as a college football player, but I wasn't good enough to do it.
I understand one of the perks of the job is you have a group text thread with all the SEC head coaches.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, we got a couple. The first one is, with all the different changes in college football, there's got to be a way for all of us to kind of respond like, hey, would y'all support this rule? Would y'all support that rule? But what's been kind of interesting is there's a few of us who like to have fun and like to joke around. And it's all started by Coach Kiffin, okay? So Coach Kiffin he'll read a yoga quote from a morning, and he'll just blast it out to all of his 16 head coaches. And it's kind of fun. Now, I don't know if it'll carry on throughout the season just because of the stress of the job and stuff, but it's been unique because I think at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all are in this pressure-filled job, and the only people that understand that stress are the other 16 head coaches in this league. And so I think there's a mutual respect there that, like, you know what, and especially when Coach Kiffin's dad passed, there was an outpouring of support for him on that thread, because I think there's an understanding that, man, these jobs are tough, but there's actually some really good dudes in the SEC as head coaches, and every once in a while you need to be encouraged.
I'm curious, who uses the most emojis?
That's pretty interesting. Coach Venables uses quite a few emojis.
When was the last conversation you had a laugh out loud moment?
Coach Cutcliffe asked us if we would all support something specific, and Coach Smart outrageously supported it. So he responded 16 times. Because Cut was like, I need to know the next 15 minutes would all of us support it. Coach Kirby was like, I support it. Hell yes, I support it. Hell yes, I support it. That double hell yes. And it was just hilarious, him going back and forth. And then, of course, Lane, being the arbitrary, came in and was like, it's 15-1 because I don't support it. So it was
perfect.
Yeah.
Now, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that you kind of said, hey, we're Mizzou. Nobody thinks we're going to beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
You had that chip on your shoulder and the underdog mentality. Now that you've moved up the ladder, and can you really use that underdog mentality anymore, or how do you look at it?
Look, I think STP for us, something to prove, is a motto that fits for just who we are right now. Because even still, people talk about us being, having a shot at it, but then they always take a backhanded slap at us like, well, it's because their schedule's not very good, or they don't have this, but, they really probably won't because blah, 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 this weakness, that weakness, or whatever. So, for us, STP,
something to prove
is always there. And the one thing about it that really hits home for us more than anything in something to prove is we really want to prove to each other that they're right for believing in the brotherhood. We want to prove to the guys that chose to come here that they were right to choose to be here with us. We want to prove to Brady Cook that he was right to face all the criticism and the hardships, and that we have his back. And so he doesn't have to prove it to the outside world. We want to prove it to him that he was right to be here. We want to prove it to Luther Burden that he was right to believe in this place. And so that's really where it starts. And then, shoot, you look at our schedule and the teams we got to play, there's a lot of things that we still have to prove to those guys, because maybe in the past they beat us. Maybe in the past there were things said. There's always going to be a motivational factor in the way we step on the field.
Say more about what you mean when you say brotherhood.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between being on a team and being in a brotherhood. And a brotherhood is a group of men with a shared experience and a shared background that invest in each other. And when I'm talking about investing, I'm talking about hours and hours and hours of blood, sweat, tears, heartache, misery, tough times, being out. We actually coined this phrase, wilderness brotherhood, because, man, a lot of the stuff that we have to endure, man, it's out in the wilderness, man. I mean, you talk about these freshmen who have to redshirt, they don't get to play very much, and they're out in 100-degree weather going against some of the best players in the competition, man. You really got to forge your own identity. And it's out in that wilderness that you really figure out who you are and what you believe in. And then you come back together and you go take on some of the toughest people out there in the toughest environments. But you got to have that wilderness brotherhood to you. So that's kind of what we're talking about.
I've heard you talk about simply focusing on being 1-0 this week.
Yeah.
Was there a seminal moment when you learned to not get ahead of yourself?
Oh, yeah. There is zero doubt in my mind. This is me personally. 2018, we're playing Wake Forest on a Thursday night, and we played really bad, got beat. Shouldn't have got beat, but we got beat. Whether it was me, whether it was our players, whether it was coaching staff, on the offensive side of the ball, we just did not have a 1-0 mindset. We just felt like, we were just going to be better than them and show up and win. And that's just not how the game works, man. We got a lot of sayings, but winning doesn't negotiate. It takes what it takes. And you can't cheat it. You cannot cheat it. It doesn't matter if you're playing a local high school team, you're playing a 1AA team, or you're playing the best of the best in the national championship game. It's going to cost the same. You got to put in the exact same amount of work, because if you don't, football will humble you real quickly. And so for us, It's just a mindset. We talk about having this play philosophy. The most important play in football is not the previous play and it's not the final score. It's this play. And that's the way we approach our work. And that's the way we approach our game week. That's the way we approach our practice. If you want to play really good on Saturdays, your confidence comes from your preparation. Well, you're only going to play good on Saturday, practice really good on Tuesday. And if you don't practice really good on Tuesday, you better have a good practice on Wednesday so that you feel confident in the plan on Saturday. Because if you think you're just going to show up and I'm going to out-talent somebody, talent alone is not a separator. Talent is not a separator. There's plenty of talented people out there. There's plenty of talented players in college football. There's got to be a different separator. And we believe the separation is in the preparation, and the separation in your confidence comes from your preparation.
You're such a great communicator. I mean, you really articulate what you're all about and succinctly and very, very clearly. So I would love to hear one of your pregame speeches. What's the best one you ever made in your mind?
I would say the Ohio State one. Before Ohio State, I just talked about they call them blue bloods because they've been given everything their whole lives. But that's not who we are at the University of Missouri. Who we are is a wilderness brotherhood, forged in the darkness, forged from a place where we run decks, formed with an elite edge out on the practice fields. When nobody else wanted us, we came together and we formed our identity. And now it's time to go show the world who we really are, because you deserve this stage. This is your stage. You go take it. And then something like that is pretty close to that.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Now, here's the deal. Those things get you fired up, and then you run down on kickoff. You get the hell knocked out of you. They're like, Coach, I don't care about that speech. That didn't mean nothing. But it's good. It's good Twitter fodder if you win. And if you lose, I will say this. I thought one of my best lines was against Georgia was, I talked about there's no fear. They can't kill us. We've already been to the bottom. Everybody in that locker room had suffered some of the worst defeats known to man the previous year. It's like, there's no fear. Like, what are they going to do to us? Like, let's just go out there and play as free and as fast as we can and show them what we're made of. And we did. We played their butt off.
Did winning the Cotton Bowl and being the coach of the year, has that freed you up, or has that put more pressure on you in your own mind?
Neither one. I can tell you this as humbly and as truthful as I can tell you. Coach of the Year really wasn't my award. When you win Coach of the Year, they're just saying, man, your team was awesome. The coaches just say, man, that team together did something really cool. Overachieved in comparison to everybody else. That wasn't my award. That was an award for my players and for my staff. So that really had anything to do with me. The Cotton Bowl, I was on the sideline. I had the best seat in the house. I didn't do much coaching in that game. I said we were going to go for it on fourth down, but other than that, man, our players won that game. Our coaches won that game. So for me, again, as far as the results are, this is just a big game of survivor. Okay, we're in the entertainment business now. Okay, coaches win and lose, and they get fired, and they're putting us all on TV, and sometimes the survivor gets invited back like it's a reunion special, and they bring one of the coaches back to the SEC. But man, my real job is to love my horse and try like hell every day not to let him down. And my horse for me is my players and my staff. Is every day when I walk in this building, I'm doing the very best I can for them so that I ain't letting them down. And if I do that and it's not good enough, and there's an old saying in the Magnificent Seven, nobody throws me my own guns and tells me to run. That's just kind of what I've come to grips with. If they tell me to go, awesome. Then my journey here is done, and I'll see if I can play golf with you one day.
I'd love that. I'm looking forward to that, as a matter of fact. This has been so much fun, and I want to have some more with my lightning round of questions. Okay, what 3 words best describe you?
Fun, fat, and fanatical about life.
Favorite Western movie?
Tombstone, Magnificent Seven, and the Cowboys. John Wayne.
If you could be one person for a day besides yourself, who would it be?
Oof. I mean, can you imagine being up in front of a group of people singing like Eric Church?
If you could be one comedian for a day besides yourself, who would it be?
Wow. I think Nate Bargatze's pretty good. I don't even know if I say his last name because he's so clean.
Who would play you in a movie?
We just did lookalikes the other day, and they say Stu from Hangover is the closest thing to me, but I got to go Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt went to Mizzou. Brad Pitt.
There you go.
This is my play.
I see a vague resemblance there.
And the youngsters call that a glow up. That'd be a glow up.
Your biggest pet peeve?
People being late.
Your favorite pro team?
My favorite pro team, Dallas Cowboys.
Your favorite female singer?
Favorite? Well, Sheryl Crow, right?
There you go. University of Missouri. I knew you'd get that one. Okay, now, if you weren't a football coach, what kind of job would you have?
I would like to think that I would be a lawyer. I really do. I binged Suits pretty good, and I actually told Commissioner Sankey if he needed any help with the negotiation of NCAA settlement that I'd watched seasons 1 through 9 of Suits, and so I think I could be pretty good Harvey Specter. My wife says I'm more like Louis Litt, though, than I am Harvey Specter.
If I turned on the radio in your car, what would I hear?
You'd hear Eric Church Radio on Pandora.
What's something about you few people would know?
I love to play the guitar. I would like to play in the World Series of Poker in Vegas before I leave this earth. And I actually have notes on my phone about how to play it. Yeah, that's probably 2 things not very many people know.
What's one of your daily rituals, something that you never miss?
Never miss?
Never miss.
I wouldn't say never, right? But on my desk, I have a Bible and a daily devotional that I read every day, and I take 10 minutes just to before whatever I do. I get a workout. I come in here. I take 10 minutes to just try to focus and get myself ready for whatever's going to happen. I think one of the challenges of leadership is that there's going to be some sort of problem that you have no idea about. And you have to show compassion and empathy, but you also have to keep the organization moving forward. And that for me is always a tough balance. And so the way I can do that is to just bring myself to center before I start the day.
Well, that's the end of the lightning round. Great job. And Brad Pitt, you look a lot like him. You're just unbelievably good-looking guy. You and your wife Lindsay, you have four daughters. How do you integrate your family time with your schedule as a coach and the high expectations that puts on you?
Yeah, that's actually something I've really been a lot more intentional about. I think when I was a coordinator and didn't have as much control over my schedule, I did a really poor job of making sure that my family and my wife was awesome. But now, we do families are always welcome in this building. So if somebody has, needs to, or if they haven't seen their family, have them come up for lunch. All my coaches have the freedom to take their kids to school the first day of school in 1 day a week. Make sure, you have the opportunity. Like today, I got in early, went back, grabbed my kids, took them to school, then came back for our 8:00 staff meeting. Thursday night's family night. We're going to go spend time with our family. And then I think the coolest thing is that my girls, they consider the team their big brothers, and they know everything about the team. My oldest daughter quizzes herself on knowing everybody's number and everybody's name on the team. And so they've just been integrated. And so that's been cool. And then being intentional. I don't have all the time that I'd love to give them, but the time I do have, we went to Montana for 5 days. And man, I put the phone away. And man, we went on a horseback ride with my 2 oldest. It was awesome. I took my 2 youngest to this pond and caught fish. One of them caught their first fish and just said, hey man, when I'm here, I'm here. And when I'm not here, I got to go do my other job. But when I'm here for you.
I did a podcast with Coach Prime, and he has 5 kids, and he told me he ranks his kids 1 to 5 each month, in terms of how they're doing.
Yeah,
how about you?
No. Now I'm going to let him be his own dad. I'm not going to critique his coaching or his parenting. But he probably doesn't have 4 daughters. If you, there'd be some very hurt feelings there on rankings. Everybody's look, here's the thing about parenting, as you know, like, they're so unique. Every child is so unique. And some of them have some of the best things about you. And some of them have those things that you're like, man, I got to watch myself on that. And you see it in them. And you got to figure out how to love them and handle them in all those.
What's your unfinished business when you think about it?
Well, I've got 2 answers for you. One, winning the SEC championship. We came here to win the SEC championship, and that wasn't just something I said. It was something I believed we could do. And so, that's going to be there until I get it done. But the other one is I haven't walked my kids down the aisle yet. And I've got 4 daughters, and I want to make sure that I have a strong enough relationship with all of them. And I want to be healthy enough that when they choose to get married, that I'm there for them and that they want me to be there. And those 2 things mean the most to me right now.
I love it. Last question. What's one piece of advice you'd give to anyone who wants to be a better leader?
I think the easy one to say is to figure out a way, whatever you're doing, right? Because leadership is every facet, right? You don't have to be the CEO of the organization to be a leader, right? But I think you can do these 3 things in any realm of your life and be a great leader. You got to cheer, challenge, connect, right? You got to find a way to connect with the person that you're wanting to influence. You have to find a way to encourage them, and you got to find a way to challenge them, because leadership is about taking people to a place that they can't get there on their own. And so the only way you can't connect and just cheer for them, otherwise they're not getting where they need to go. You got to challenge them. And so it's finding that magical formula of, to me, it's those 3 things. It's being able to connect with them so that they respect what you're going to say, being able to encourage them to be the best version of themselves, but being able to challenge them, like you said, truth tellers, when they're not quite accomplishing what they need to.
Well, I want to tell you something, Eliah. I'm so glad that I connected with you. And from the second I met you, I wanted to cheer you on. No doubt about that. But I am going to challenge you a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you should move beyond winning the SEC and win the national championship.
Yeah.
More than once.
Well, if you'll get behind our program and tell me what game you're coming to, and I've already offered you to be the guy that beats Big Mo, but you haven't given me a date yet. So I'm going to challenge you to give me a date on when you're coming to the game. In order to win, it takes everybody. It takes everybody. And I need you to get off that sideline and, get over here. I know you're a big big Tom Brady, big Manning fan. I need you to get over here with the Tigers, the Mizzou Tigers. You might be, here's the difference. You might be the guy that gets us over the top.
There we go. Well, I'm going to be coming this fall, and I look forward to spending some time with you and watching Mizzou win another football game.
I can't wait to have you over here, man.
So thank you very much. I appreciate it very much for you taking the time.
Let's see if you can get this right. M-I-Z.
Z-O-U.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but when I listen to Eliah, I feel like I need to go throw my shoulder pads on and run through a brick wall for him. He really knows how to fire up people. And I hope you were listening, because every leader has to find ways to motivate their team members. For Eliah, it starts with connection, really getting to know people and understanding what makes them tick. Then it takes encouragement, because as I always say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. From there, you can challenge people. As Eliah points out, leaders have to take people where they couldn't go on their own. In the week ahead, take this simple formula straight out of Eliah's playbook and use it. Look for opportunities to connect with your teammates, to encourage them, to challenge them. Keep those 3 elements in balance, and I guarantee you'll level up your coaching skills. So do you want to know how leaders lead? What we learned today is that great leaders balance how they connect, balance how they encourage, and balance how they challenge their team members. Coming up next on How Leaders Lead is Mike Wirth, the chairman and CEO of Chevron.
I never would have approached it that way if I didn't stop and ask somebody who I really looked up to. And so my piece of advice is ask. Talk to other people, ask for their advice, and then learn and apply it.
So be sure to come back again next week to hear our entire conversation. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of How Leaders Lead, where every Thursday you get to listen in while I interview some of the very best leaders in the world. I make it a point to give you something simple on each episode that you can apply to your business so that you will become the best leader that you can be.